Hi, I'm Lisa Singer. I am the Senior Director Events Programming at MediaPost, and this is Brand Insider BTS, where I get to pull back the curtain on some of the most influential women marketers today. And with me is Jane Ko. She is a creator, influencer, and the founder of Taste of Koko. Hey, Jane,
Hi,
how are you? You look nice and cool. Where are you? You're in Austin, right?
I'm in Austin and it is a fall day. It is 90.
Oh, okay. So it hasn't. I'm going to be in Austin next week, as you know. So I'm going to have to be prepared for that because I'm in New York and we've been getting cooler weather. So I,
Yeah.
I
A
feel,
cool day for us is 90
yeah,
right
I'm
now.
sure you're putting on your turtlenecks.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm so happy we're able to do this. And as I sort of alluded to, I'll be seeing you next week because you're going to be speaking at our summit. But in the meantime, I just was so impressed with you and your career, and I just had to do what I do and find out more about you. So I'm so glad you're able to do this.
Yeah, I'm super excited to chat.
Yeah, well, so it's been 14 years since you started A Taste of Cocoa. And it's evolved. You've gone, as a blogger to content creator, an entrepreneur, an influencer. So through that time, there's been a big evolution for Taste of Cocoa. You've even written, what, two best-selling books, and
Mhm.
you have been featured in magazines from O Magazine to New York Times. You were Disruptor 2020 by Austin. So I could go on and on and on. Okay, so very impressive and so awesome for you and how your career has evolved that way and since Taste of Cocoa. But what I want to ask you is, how have you evolved personally? Not about Taste of Cocoa, not about the businesswoman, the entrepreneur, and I'm sure that defines you in some ways, but still, on a personal level, how have you evolved in that time?
I don't know if I've ever actually had this question asked, and I've done a lot of interviews. I think I got confidence along the way. I grew up in a really small town, only child, very sheltered family. Was always told like you can't do it. And so when I moved to Austin, I was again very sheltered, like super shocked that just college alone, which was UT Austin, had 5 times the number of the population of the town I grew up in my entire life. And starting a taste of yoga on social media, you're then kind of thrown onto this like, you know, the big world, the World Wide Web, which is scary, like millions of people. And I think along the way, I gained confidence and be able started realizing, like I had a voice, and while I might be small, but I can be mighty. And people listen and they like my food opinions, they like my food recommendations, and then they started wanting to know things that were happening, in the house and like what my dog is eating, what my cat is eating, and I just like along the way, which is not anything I could have ever expected.
Yeah, well, and you said, okay, so grew up in a small town. Where are you from originally? And then tell me about that because you said you didn't really have that confidence and you were sort of told no. But
Yeah.
how did you can't suddenly just create that. Like you can start to evolve as you talked about. But where do you think it initially came from for you to do something that's maybe out of your wheelhouse or, just to sort of take that step out of that comfort zone?
So I was born in Taiwan. My family moved to the States when I was 3. I grew up in a small town in South Texas called Port Lavaca. And culturally, as an Asian American, we are told to like not color outside the lines. And so for me to not follow in the path of a traditional 9 to 5, a doctor, lawyer, like anything that's kind of higher education is uncommon and off the beaten path. And so for the first 6 years, I didn't tell my parents that I quit my job because I was just like, I'm gonna figure this out. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm probably not going back to a desk job. And so culturally, like I grew up with that mindset. And I meet a lot of other Asian Americans all the time who are like, how do you have this bravery to do what you're doing? Like, how are you in media? And how do you share your opinions and you're not afraid of what people are gonna say? And just like, how did you have the courage to have an opinion at all?
Well, and I agree. And especially, just even sharing your background, that makes it even that much more impressive that you did do that. And we are seeing more and more people stepping out, doing influence, becoming influencers or blogging but when you're talking 14 years ago, not as much. And again, that was something where I know when you started off, at least from your LinkedIn page, I always do my snooping,
Yeah.
and you started off, I believe, working like what was it? Let me see, a teaching assistant. And
Hmm.
from there, while still in school, it looks like, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that's when you started a taste of Cocoa. And
Yes.
as you're building your brand, you're then working social media for different companies until today, obviously, and you continue to do that. But so what sort of why did you get that start? You obviously had the vision of Taste of Cocoa, the vision of blogging, but how did you then tell us about your path? Like, how did you get from there, just saying, I'm going to do this or try it, or tell me where that came from, and then to where you are today, to the success you're actually having today?
Yeah, so entering college, everyone that I grew up with knew exactly what they wanted to do, like pretty early on. Doctor, lawyer, like all those things. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I also was not doing well in school. So it was pretty discouraging when I'd go to class and I was having I had such bad test anxiety. I even went to the ER like my first semester because I had such bad test anxiety that I broke out in hives. And
Wow.
so early on, I was like, you know what, school's probably not for me. So let's figure out a survival plan. So it's kind of like survival of the fittest. And I worked 4 part-time jobs while I was at UT. I did dipping dots. I was a TA, a teaching assistant. I did tour guides. And for me, I just had such bad anxiety in talking with other people. And I knew that. And so I was like, let me find as many outward facing part-time jobs as I could to get over this fear of talking. And during that time, I was also reading a few national blogs by predominantly women, and I was very inspired by a lot of them were writing about life at home, food. A lot of it was fashion, and I would actually wanted to do a fashion blog to start with, but I didn't have the money to buy clothes. I couldn't afford really anything. And so we started working with part-time jobs. And for me, the easiest thing that I could afford at the time was making recipes in my college boyfriend's apartment, because I still lived in the dorms. And that's how I started. And I didn't have this grand plan of what it could possibly be. I just was like, oh, there's these national blogs I'm reading. Let me Google how do you build a website. Started on Blogspot, then moved to WordPress a couple of years later, then hopped on Instagram. And I think the thing about social media is I'm an introvert person. If anyone's watching this hasn't counted out already, is a lot of I think social media content creators and influencers are actually a lot of us are introverts, and that's why we do so well online because we're just talking to ourselves essentially. And maybe we'll have some outward facing, events me speaking at Media Post next week. Um, but I think that's why we've done so well and on our little corner on the internet.
Wow. I mean, it's funny when you say it that way because, well, it was always hard for me initially being on camera or I felt it almost like it's like once I knew it was my job, I was okay, but it was more the auditions or doing things where you were being kind of judged. So
Yeah.
that's why I have issue doing something like this is fine because I'm talking to you. But for me to do what you do and just turn on the camera and start talking, I don't know who I'm talking to. I don't know how they're responding. That's where I get so insecure. As opposed to, Thomas, you said it's the opposite. You're not talking to anyone. And so that's making it easier for you. So like, it just, I mean, all right, I have to read this quote that was, I was looking through again with what you were doing. And you were described as a badass and Austin's OG food influencer. So that was by a podcaster who had interviewed you and had known your career. Um, you know, there's a lot of women out there, a lot of people in general who want to be you. They're aspiring to be you. And your start is like, it's so amazing that you had the guts to do the way you did it. It's different today. And so you've learned a lot. Is there anything that you would advise someone who is starting out, who wants to have your kind of success? And I don't mean you can't say you're going to be you because you're just you. And I think when it comes to influencers or bloggers, personality plays a huge part in that.
Yeah.
That maybe something that you've learned along the way that would make it a little easier, maybe something that you wish you knew.
Yeah, I probably couldn't, if I was starting over today with what the state of social media is right now, I don't think I couldn't replicate what I've done. And I don't know if I would survive on social media right now. if I was starting from scratch and trying to start an audience.
In what way? Because it's so competitive now, or what's the difference now that you feel like that you wouldn't be able to?
The online bullying.
Yeah,
It's I think in the last 15 months, it's been crazy to see what unravels on TikTok. And I don't know what the Gen Z call it. It's like hate shaming, or I don't even know what the term is, but it's the content that probably comes up on all of our For You pages, right? And I'm guilty of also watching it, you know. It's like the tea on the Bachelorette right now, right? And then him showing their intimate text messages. Like, it's scary. Like that did not, you just wouldn't do that like 5 years ago. Like you wouldn't share that kind of information just to get a rise and, you know, prove a point on the internet. And just, yeah, I don't think I could do that now. I don't think people, for me, I'm giving food recommendations, and I feel like even specifically for Austin, people are more interested about the drama that's happening at the recent bar that just shut down because there's a sexual assault case than the actual quality of, like, let's say the new ramen shop that just opened.
right.
And what people are consuming and gravitating towards is different. And for me to get people excited about this ramen that I just had 2 days ago, they're just like, yeah, but have you heard about X, Y, and Z bar that's getting like sued right now? And I'm like, yeah, but let's talk about the noodles. And
Right.
so I don't know if I could survive in this kind of climate. So someone who's starting now, I always say, like, what is your why? Like, is it to do money? Is it to get famous? Is it like, what is your why? And also, like, depending on who you're following and it's inspiring you, and if it's me, for me specifically, know that this was a 14-year journey, and I also did not ask for this. Um, and I've had a lot of luck along the way. And I think with luck, what I say is like, I feel like the harder I work, the more luck I have. And I got really lucky. Like within my first 3 months of A Taste of Coco, which was just a website at that time, there was a bank doing like a national tour throughout the US, and they happened to stop in Austin, and they were like, hey, you're doing something different. We want you to be one of our candidates for our nationwide commercial. And like that just gave me like immediate bump, right? And I didn't even know what I was doing. I just was like, oh, I'm just trying to bake some cupcakes at home, but no one else was doing that. And then from that, like that put me in front of like brands like Carnival Cruise Line and like Best Buy. And I had like a 3-year, like I had a 4-year contract with Best Buy. Like, you know, one brand led to another. Um, and at the end of the day, I always say, like, I work in advertising. I'm a small part of the whole advertising food chain. And also I'm just trying to be me, but I don't know for anyone that's watching, like, knows that there's so much more that's behind that. And it's not about the fame.
Right. It just, I mean, it obviously it came about, and that's something that you deal with and appreciate both, I'm sure, some depending on the day, which way that might go. But you had a strategy, because when you say luck, which I don't like luck, because
Okay.
I I feel like yes, you had very amazing in circumstances or things that happen, but you needed to put yourself out there. Then you needed to also be good. And you needed to, you know what I mean? Like, so if that restaurant came, oh no, that bank came up to you and wanted you to do something, if you didn't do it well, then you wouldn't have had any of the other brands coming to you looking for you. So yes, there were fortunate circumstances that happened and that made it go that way, but you put yourself in there. And a lot of people won't do that. They speak to it. And so was there a strategy though? So aside from, yes, you had early on these opportunities that were amazing for you, but was there a main strategy that you feel like helped the trajectory of your career?
So my last full-time job was, I was a social media manager of a kind of a quick service concept, and it was a startup, so which means you are basically hired for 10 other roles. And one of the roles that was imposed on me was handling our customer service. And the CEO at that time was a stickler for customer support and service, where he wanted all emails answered within 30 minutes. And so if not, he'd come running my desk and be like, Jane, we got a complaint here. You need to respond to them on email, try to get them on the phone, remedy this, give them the refund. And that just like conditioned me for months. And so that's stuck with me now, almost I don't know if it's been 15 years, maybe 13 years later, is I respond to my emails within like 10, 15, it's like a chronic problem. And when it comes to brand work and agency work, I think that's made me very quick and agile is once an agency or brand reaches out to me for work, I'm getting that contract signed within a couple of hours. And from what I hear from like, agencies and brands that work with influencers are like, hey, we don't hear from them. We don't hear back from them on their emails. They don't even check their emails. You have to DM them. They only want to do work over DM. And for me, like, I'm kind of just on standby, which is just kind of glamorize customer support all the time. Like right now, I'm working on a massive editing project with a big travel brand, and we're on revision 15 for edits, which is a lot of revisions.
Mhm.
But I tell you what, I say like, yes, of course, I will get this another revision. I'm sorry that word was pronounced, not in the way you wanted, because now we're, in the era of video and voiceovers are a nightmare because they want me to reread and reread and reread the script. But I'm just like, yes, of course, I will get this back to you in 10 minutes. Like a video agency's not going to do that. They'll be like, we'll get back to you in 2 weeks, right? And I think that's, and what I'm saying with that is like, I think that's been a very big defining character of my success is just quick responses saying yes and thank you. I will get this to you then, and then actually do it and be like, thank you so much. Thank you for hiring me. And then I always send the thank you gift actually whenever I finish every single project. And that's from what I've heard is more than what 90% of the competition is willing to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can imagine. And I think it's a work ethic. It's just like you have this service mentality and really it's ahead of the game in the sense that you've been doing that for so long, because now when you talk to any marketer, it's like you need to reach the consumers, you need to have that kind of consumer centric mentality, and not just about consumers, but also who you're working with for in your sense, as an employee. Or so it's just that I think it's just showing people that they matter. I mean, it just comes to as simple as that. If you are ignoring them, then what are they thinking you think of them?
Yeah. And I'm always like, it's not hard.
Yeah.
Just respond to people. And if you say you're gonna do something, just do it.
Yep. No, I totally agree. Well, I want to go into, I saw something that was so good. It's very cute on Instagram. This
Okay.
picture of your boyfriend, Josh,
Okay. Yeah.
and he's now, well, you can answer it. He's kneeled down in with you in front of the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
I love that you said boyfriend. I feel like sorry. Um, I love that you said boyfriend because I feel like a little part of me is still like, oh, I'm still like 20 years old when I started Taste of Coco. And a blink of an eye, how did all this happen? Because I say this really from the bottom of my heart. Every time I get an award, I'm just like, I didn't ask for this. Or people are like, oh, how do you know to do all this stuff and all this charity work? And I'm like, I don't know. I was just trying to be me and nobody else was doing anything. So I like that you said boyfriend. Josh proposed to me last August,
Patience.
in Paris. We met during lockdown. I was in Austin, Texas. He was in LA, running a health and wellness company. And I mean, this kind of goes back, I guess, to my customer support and just, I guess, hard work ethic. But when we first started online dating, um, I already knew I was like, I'm not doing long distance. I've done it with other relationships. It didn't work. It was not for me. And so pretty early on, I was like, hey, I can't do online dating. I won't do long distance. Will you move to Texas for me? And at that time, I think I was like 31. And so 20-year-old me would have never said that. And I've gone through a series of relationships where you're, not direct and you're not like, hey, this is exactly what I want.
Mhm.
And he was like, yep, I'll move, and packed up his stuff, moved to Texas in 2 months. And we both have a really strong work ethic. That was also one of my concerns when I first met him was like, hey, I work a lot. I can't be with someone who just checks out at 5 p.m. My workday sometimes goes to 3 a.m. and I work for myself. No one's telling me to work that late. And like I had all these things. And he was like, I'm on the same page.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, one, I congratulations for having the guts to say that. I think
Oh, 20-year-old me couldn't do that.
a lot of 30, 40-year-olds couldn't do that. Like it's just I think a lot of women, men even, like I think how many times do you hear about people maybe saying just settling for what's
Yeah.
okay. And down the line, you finally have to leave it because you if you know what you need, not, I mean, you're not going to get everything and all of that, but just what those deal breakers are. And you say that, and then that it worked that way. So that's awesome. Josh sounds like a great guy that he was able to talk to you like that and be a part of that. So, but I really am impressed that you did that completely, more so than your success as the successful books and whatever. That to me is amazing. So, I think that's awesome. But okay, so. Yes, I thought it was a great picture. Totally romantic picture, but you wrote a caption with it. So this is where my other part of the question comes from. You said, sometimes you're lucky enough to meet someone that works hard, plays harder, and dreams bigger than you do, which you alluded to. Here's to a lifetime of funsies. Okay, so what does a lifetime of funsies mean to you? When are you having the most fun?
I feel like you should be an investigative reporter on the side if you're not doing that already. Yeah, so funsies is a term that we started saying early on because, and I don't know if you kind of already dissected this, but as an influencer, like my life is my job, right? Like right now, I'm having this conversation with you. It's still technically work, right? And when I go to a restaurant, yeah, I'm eating this delicious food, but I'm also shooting content, so it's still for work, right? And when I'm editing content till 3 a.m., it's obviously after hours, but it still works. So we started having, we had to start like classifying certain things where he'd be like, is this for work or is it for funsies? Like, if we're going to a restaurant, and it is a fine line because what I do for work is kind of what people do for fun. Like even when I have travel campaigns, which sound amazing, like when people are like, oh my gosh, Jane, you just got back from going to Tulum for 5 days and you went to Jackson Hole for 5 days. And I'm just like, yeah, but I'm hitting the ground running at 7 a.m. with a list of deliverables that the brand or agency wants me to shoot. I get back to hotel room at 10 p.m. Then I have to deliver all the content depending on their turnaround. And so we had to start classifying like, okay, is this for funsies or is this for work? And so, I'd have to be transparent. If we're going to a new restaurant, I'd be like, okay, this is not technically funsies because it's a new restaurant. I do want to post about it. So I'll need you to shoot content and you'll have to eat the food cold. Like, I'm sorry. So
That's
that's
what.
how we called it
Okay.
is this for work? It's for funsies.
So with that said, when are you having the most fun? Like and getting away from your work and go. I mean, obviously it's even nice. It's nice to go to a nice restaurant, whether it's for funsies or for work. But in general, is there something that you guys like to do or that you like to do on your own or whatever it may be that that's when you're having fun. That's when you're just really letting loose or just enjoying yourself.
Yeah, we like taking the dog to the park. Now that it's been a little cooler in Austin, which is, not over 100 degrees, we love taking the dog to the park and sitting on the picnic. It's just, I mean, that's so simple, but for us, we don't usually have time to do that. I have scaled back on restaurant visits and content shooting. When I first started in my 20s, I was doing 3 restaurant visits a day.
Wow.
I don't know how I did it because I can barely do one a day right now. But I was just like, super hungry, literally, and just like, I'll shoot all the things. I'm so excited, excited to meet all these owners and like shoot all this content. I was doing all these free photo shoots for restaurants, also because I didn't know better. Um, so we actually go out to eat for fun now. Like, and I've been like, wow, this is great. This is what I was like, no wonder people love asking me for date night recommendations. I was like, it's amazing when you don't have to shoot content and you can actually enjoy the food and it's not cold. And I love having conversations with owners, but a lot of the times, like, they'll sit down and be like, let me tell you about all the food. And then it's 45 minutes later. And when you're the plus one and you're like, it's Thursday night, it doesn't feel great. So we've been able to go out a lot now just for fun for date night. And I'm not shooting content, and there's a separation, but I am guilty of that because I'm just like every opportunity is a content opportunity. Let me just shoot everything. And Josh was very accommodating about that the first. Like, I mean, he still is, but like the first 2 years, I was like, no, everything must be recorded and shot. And now I'm just like, it's fine. We don't need to shoot this.
Yeah, and just enjoy. No, that's great. I do think that because like you said, I mean, when you have a work mentality on, just like even when talking, I do these events and everyone hears about them, they're like, oh yeah, that's a tough job. Like one time I was like complaining to someone, I'm like, yeah, I got off the plane and I had to go right to the cocktail party. And he's like, oh, poor Lisa. Like,
But
so
they don't understand it until they actually do it. And they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, of course you don't.
Yeah, but then I love to go to cocktail, and to be honest, I do have fun. I enjoy them. So ultimately it is, but I totally get what you're saying. So I'm curious, and I don't want it to be what you said, which I'll get to. What's the one thing most people get wrong about you? Now I know you mentioned at the top you were an introverted, which to me, I was surprised when you said that because
Yeah.
again, I feel like what you do is for me, I find that very it would be something difficult in that sense. But that said, is there something else that when people first meet you, that they might think you're one way or they get wrong, and then a little bit later they're like, you know what, you're actually this.
Um, I don't want to say the strategic, but I guess maybe smart. I think people, the general audience that's watching, also because I'm not gonna share everything. I couldn't share everything that we were doing every single day. There's just no way. But I think when people actually have a conversation with me, they're like, "Oh, you're actually like a marketer. Like you like Josh and I have investments in several CPG companies. Like we have a real estate portfolio that we're working on." And that's not stuff that I share online because I'm not running a business advice page. And also I don't aspire to do that. I'm not here to give people advice. But when I do have these like deep conversations with people in person, they're very surprised by that. They're just like, "Oh, I just thought you were a great person to ask for where do I get tacos."
I
And I'm
think
like, I can do that. I was like, I'll do that all day. I don't
yeah,
want to have like, business lectures, but that's the stuff that does get me excited, which again, like I never imagined that that was stuff that I could do now when I was barely able to pay for bills and when I first started tasting cocoa.
yeah, no, I mean, as I said, just hearing what you did and just putting yourself out there. I think that's what, if one can take anything from what you've done. And I'm not saying that that's it, but the fact that you just got started that way and kept putting yourself out there and then keeping your work ethic. I mean, I think that is what is a valuable lesson for anyone just starting out, whether it's now, 10 years ago, or 10 years from now. I think that would be a way to go. So yeah, no, okay. So, and it's actually probably a good thing because if they're going to underestimate you, you can, not only wow them by they know you are really smart, but also that you know your stuff. It's a good way to kind of not that you're going to be, but maneuver your own way. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
feel like if people are unsuspecting and they may think that they can get one over on you, and ultimately that's not the case. So it just might be an advantage, especially I think for women today.
Yeah.
So okay, well, I want to get back to the Josh proposing again, and another part of the caption was he dreams bigger than you do. Okay, so but I just want to know what are your dreams?
I mean, growing up, I didn't have very big dreams because I didn't think I could do really anything. And I talk about this all the time. I'll tell Josh and be like, so my dream growing up was to be a librarian and I wanted to have my own library of books. Like I don't know, those were my little girl dreams. And so we've surpassed those. Um, I don't know. I mean, most times it's just like, I just want to have no stress. I just want projects to go smoothly. I don't think I have big aspirations. Like for me, it wasn't like, hey, I want to run, or it's not like, oh, I wanted to run my own company and be able to have, a team and like work with all these brands. Like even when I goal set with talent agencies I've been with before, I'm not like, hey, here's like 50 brands that I really, really want to work with. I think all of my brand partnerships have authentically came to my inbox. And again, my 10-minute response policy. Um, I don't know. I think right now we're just kind of at an interesting stage. Like we got married in June at the courthouse. We have a celebration coming up in November. Right now we're building a custom house, our first one for our primary residence. And my dream is I hope we finish on time. Um, I'm not asking for much because it's been a stressful couple of months with us GCing this project on our own. So
This,
I
yeah,
feel like, yeah, I feel like once we get through this season is what I like to call it, right? We all have different seasons, and I've been in like a growth like spurt growing season for so long, and recently it's been like high fertilizer, like we're working like 15-hour days. I think I might be able to like take a breath and be like, all right, let's now goal plan and dream plan and what is the next wave?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, I mean, taking it tomorrow, today, tomorrow, like, and just making the best of those times. But I'm curious, getting back to when you, as you said, when you were growing up and you really didn't have big dreams necessarily. You didn't necessarily think that there were these huge possibilities. Today, there are these possibilities because you've experienced that. Has that impacted the way you think now, or are you still sometimes going back to that little girl in that small town and still kind of keeping that the expectations more level as opposed to thinking, oh, I can, anything is possible.
Um, this year season, I've been more in like survival mode. Like, let's just get through the next hour because I think we've bitten off more than I think we dreamed a little too big where we were like, let's do all these real estate projects. And so which is why occasionally I'll be like have a little like flashback where I'm like, oh yeah, remember when me little Jane only wanted these things and look at where we're at now. Um Occasionally I'll go to that, safe space but a lot of it's been just kind of survival mindset.
Yeah. So you go back and forth. Okay, speaking of little Jane, so if you were to give little Jane a piece of advice, what would that be? Something that you maybe wish you knew then that you know now?
It's kind of hard because I do sometimes like joke about this with friends because like the thing is if I go back and give her advice then my life would then not pan out in this way, right? Where I would be like, everything's okay. Because back then it was like everything's not okay and we can only take care of ourselves. And I'm also only child, so I don't have like that dependent characteristic. So I don't know if I would actually tell her anything. Maybe some dating advice. There's definitely certain relationships where I'm like, we should just let go. Like we should have let go a long time ago and not tolerate a lot of crap, you
Mhm.
know. So maybe just that.
Okay, that makes sense. Is there a small, maybe inconsequential thing a talent maybe, or that you can do that people would be surprised to hear about?
Oh, I don't know. I can speak somewhat fluent Mandarin, which I don't, talk about much on social media. I don't know, maybe that. I don't think I ever talk about that and people are kind of surprised by that.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, no, I mean, mine would be I'm a great cab whistler.
Oh, oh, I wish I could do that.
Something
That's actually handy.
I've definitely had people impressed with my
Yeah.
cab. So, okay, what's your guilty pleasure?
Uh, I love editing with my laptop open with Netflix in the background with like a giant bag of chips next to me. And I'm just a happy camper. And I will also share that is I love computer work. Like I can only do a few conversations a day. Like I get really drained. Especially like with interviews like this, I'll do a few a week and I try to limit myself, otherwise I get super burnt out. But that's how I started Taste of Coco was I would do my whole day of, all the restaurant shoots like I talked about, get home at 9 o'clock, take a shower, be on my computer at 10 o'clock. Then I would just edit till 2 or 3 and no one's telling me to do that. I don't have an employer that's like paying me to do extra hours, but I just love that's like my happy place. It's just like playing some movie or show in the background and I can just sit there and edit and write blog posts and that version now is like editing, videos for TikTok or Instagram, but that's my like my happy time.
Oh, awesome. Okay, well, I have one more question. If have you had a failure in your life that you learned from and that redirected you in a better place?
A failure.
Could have been just something that just was a miss, or it doesn't
Uh,
something that was a challenge that you hit, and then you sort of had to.
yeah. I think for me, just because this is fresh on my mind, is managing a team has been really challenging for me. Like hiring and managing, and then knowing when to let someone go because it's not a good fit has been very challenging for me, and something I wish I was better at. And I think as a content creator, um, the industry doesn't understand like we're like kind of everything. Like we're editor, like we're doing everything, right? Admin work, everything, see, the taxes, bookkeeping, everything. And when you have to start outsourcing, like I just don't do well with managing. Like I'd rather just have a full stack of things that I need to do within the next 24 hours and I'll just put a heads down and like if I have a pull all-nighter to do it, I'll do it. But having to offload that to someone else and trying to explain to them how to do it in the perfection, the perfect way I want it to be done has been really challenging for me. And I wish that's something that I could still, I guess when you said overcome, like I've gone through contractors and team members over the years, and with every hire and fire, you do learn. But sometimes, you know, you let your guard down because, you know, that's something I'm still learning.
Still a work in progress.
Yeah.
Well, no, but I mean, it sounds like you probably have to, I mean, and I don't know, you don't, if it is something that you want to keep expanding, then I think that's one of the hardest things for leaders to do. But one of the ones that is most necessary is delegating and letting, sort of letting go of certain things. But that means bringing in people that you trust and being able to let go of those that aren't quite fulfilling that. So, I mean, do you see that? Or I know you don't want to necessarily look to the future, but do you see that something as what you want to hope to get to or come to, or do you like
Oh,
staying?
for sure. Yeah, for sure. And I think for content creators, if we're talking about this specific line of work, I always tell other content creators, like when you're doing a project and you decide not to do it, and you've already signed a contract and you're halfway through this project, like you can't do that. Like you will get blacklisted, that agency's not gonna work with you. There's just too many people on the line. And it just baffles my mind with how many people in the content creation industry or in the influencer industry that, you know, even if they've signed the contract and they're at the event, they're like, nope, I don't want to do this. I'm leaving. I'm not gonna do the deliverables. And I just find that like really crazy. And I think when you work a contractor, sometimes that happens. Like, you know, I have big shoots, then I'm there, and then all of a sudden the photographer I booked is like, I don't, I'm just not feeling it today. I'm not coming. And I'm like, what do you mean you're not coming? Like, get here now. And that's just kind of the scary thing, right? With working with people you just don't know.
Yep.
And
No,
so I think maybe if I backtrack from that, my goal for myself is like, can I get better at vetting people and
yeah,
people that I'm gonna work with, whether it's a one-off or long term, in understanding someone's needs and be able to catch them before they decide to no show.
right. And also being able to, which I find the most difficulty is when they don't meet those needs, letting them go. Because they may be these great people otherwise, but you
Yeah.
still need what you need.
Which I have a hard time with that too.
Yeah. I would definitely, I can
You
see
know,
that.
when you give second chances, then third chances, and I'm like, Jane, we gotta let this go.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. So, well, Jane, thank you so much. It's really been such a pleasure talking with you. I'm excited to meet you in Austin in person. And I just really appreciate you taking the time and sharing everything.
Yeah, I'll see you next week.
Sounds good. And thank you for watching. And as I always say, if you have a woman marketer who you want me to kind of pull back the curtain on, please let me know. Just send me an email, lisa@mediapost.com, and I will do my best to get her. So thanks again for watching.